Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Nights in the Kitchen, the E2KG Network's Defenders podcast. I'm back with the other member of the E2KG Entertainment crew, Mr. Dave Pecci. How you doing, Dave?
Hey, I guess Lee's and everyone out there watching and watching later. Everyone's having a good week coming up.
Yes, so as Dave mentioned, we are late. A lot of that is due to YouTube itself. So,
Hashtag privacy debate.
yeah, so I, in an honest error, used the word Netflix when I was titling the live event for the live stream. Wasn't intentional. I was obviously not posting pirated content, which I assume is why that part of the algorithm is there when another service's name is invoked in the actual title of the video. I was also not uploading content. It was for a live event. So when it got flagged by YouTube, we were issued a content strike on the E2KG channel, and our ability to live stream was disabled. So it seems a very scorched earth policy in response to a one-word error in the title of a live stream. So I'm a little bothered. Thankfully, this is a hobby for us and not a business, because I could see how people who were actually monetizing their channel would be angered by that type of response. But there it is. So we're over on my personal channel, which I really don't even use any longer, and that is where we're live streaming from. And then I will download, maybe or maybe not, edit the video and then re-upload it over to the E2KG network. So the live tweet is actually out because for some reason my channel has that a lot more wired and automated than it actually is on the E2KG network. So tonight is our final episode. We're going to go ahead and wrap up our discussions that we have been going through for the last few weeks, talking the Netflix original series, The Defenders, and then we're going to be out. So we're covering episodes 7 and 8 tonight. And Dave, I was planning on approaching this very casually. I know you have some well-written notes, so maybe those will help guide us through the conversation as well.
Funny. I got notes.
Yeah.
I don't have notes. You got notes. So that's the way we run, everybody. We're just some laid-back techies. What can you say?
Right. So tonight, I just kind of want to wrap up with our overall how the series ending felt. So episode 7. Do you have the titles up, Dave?
Let's see. Yes, I do. So the first one is Fishes in the Jailhouse, or Fish in the Jailhouse. And the second one is called Resume.
Right. So how did you feel about Fish in a Jail, or Fishes in a Jailhouse?
Fish in the Jailhouse.
Fish in the Jailhouse.
Yeah, that's an interesting name. But I don't know, man. The sad part is Defenders was such a slow burn through the whole thing.
Whew, yeah.
I guess, there was like maybe 2 episodes that were overall better with more action. 8 was probably one of them, where at least we got 40 minutes of content that was more action-centered.
Yeah, and a really long denouement also. Like when the
it was terrible, worse than like Luke Cage's. Like Luke Cage is actually good though. This was kind of like, we know you don't know that Daredevil's still alive, and we all know that you're mourning about him. Get on with it. Like, isn't there anything more to be said about the Defenders? And then a part of that too, they could have added more Defenders content, but instead we got that Punisher reveal at the end too.
Well, right. So let's hold off on that. We'll swing back to episode 8. Episode 7 was kind of like the poster child for the series, right? Like, we talked about it being a slow burn. We talked about it a lot of talking heads content time. And episode 7 kind of starts off exactly like that. You get like this weird like 1970s heavy guitar solo oriented song. I can't remember if it was before or after the opening. I think it was before. and you get a lot of talking heads before the Defenders. Spoilers, by the way, we are going to be talking about the show in the detail. The assumption on our Nights in the Kitchen is that you've actually watched either all of the Defenders or these specific 2 episodes before joining in. So, a lot of talking before the Defenders actually escape. Even more talking amongst the villains. I don't remember if really.
It's so much talking. I don't even know if there were. I don't think there was any action, I think, in that episode, because that episode ends off when they go inside the building.
So I think episode 7 ends.
They're inside, right?
Yeah, they're definitely inside. I thought it ended with because I thought it ended with.
Oh, no, you're right. That scene has the Iron Fist and Elektra action.
Right, so their fight starts in episode 7, right?
Yeah, but
don't the rest of the Defenders also have the dialogue from Colleen about them planning to blow the building up? I thought it opens with Luke Cage basically started with Luke Cage saying he's not okay with the concept of blowing the building up.
I think that starts in 8 is when they finally talk. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so I don't, I actually thought maybe we had a lot to talk about 7. I don't know that there was that much to talk about 7.
All right, I'll go through my 3 notes then.
Yeah, let's go, please.
Okay. 13 minutes in, we have Elektra's chat with the Hand. To me, this is just kind of she's reaffirming her leadership, and we kind of see how Elektra is going to be now. With anything, I think with resurrections, like we saw with an Iron Fist, every resurrection, you kind of become a little bit more evil. So I kind of noted that from when we saw Elektra in Daredevil to Elektra in the Defenders, she's a bit more selfish here. She's more caring about what she wants. And as far as we could tell, she's always wanted Matt, and now she's only concerned about getting the what's it called again? The material or whatever?
The substance.
The substance, right.
So this is when she basically tells them, like, they're all giving her lectures about the Hand and how they operate and how she's going to need to lead them. And she's like, I don't care about the Hand and their agenda.
Yeah.
The only thing I care about is getting the substance so I can be immortal, essentially.
And I don't want to say she's always been selfish, but it just she comes off, in kind of her villainy that she's the selfish. I don't care what happens to the Hand. I don't care what happens in New York necessarily. I just want the substance that I can live. And and kind of Daredevil, she was kind of like very pushy with trying to get Matt too.
Right.
Which that's kind of a weird tie-in too, because this is also the episode where we see this short clip between what's his name?
Stick and Elektra.
Stick and Elektra. And Stick wanted Matt inside the chase, and Elektra was like, look, I tried. The guy doesn't want to be in there. There's nothing we can do. And to me, that scene just kind of reaffirmed that, Elektra didn't really care if Matt joined the Stick or not. What Elektra really cared about was the love that she got from Matt. Because obviously they've known each other for a very long time, since Matt was younger.
Right.
So, more than anybody else, there's probably a connection, always will be a connection between those two, whether it's romantic or not.
Right. So I want to take a second to talk about disillusioned characters in this universe, and especially on the show and in the surrounding shows. Like, I'm really over these characters not getting what the world is like now. So we have a lot, and it's in this episode, but it carries over much more strongly into episode 8. Like, Misty Knight just not getting that Luke Cage gets involved in things that are just unnatural, and that the NYPD is just not equipped to handle. Right? Her constantly haranguing them about being vigilantes and insisting that the New York Police Department has the capability to deal with all these things that they're like. You've had the incident, right? And quite honestly, in this timeline, you should have also had several other of the events that we've seen unfold in the Marvel Cinematic Universe occur, right? This isn't a month after. This isn't 30 days after the incident, right? This is, I'm assuming, well on a year or 2 years after the incident. You have the presence of superpower beings, like you not getting that when a superhero tells you that they need to not tell you stuff because you and your law enforcement aren't equipped to handle it. Like they should have gotten that by now. Like Misty Knight should have got. They make her by continuing to push that storyline, that plot line. They're making her out to be less intelligent than she's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, and I actually had that was my next point. That's funny that you brought that up. So 29 minutes in is really when we get that talk between Claire and Misty, and kind of Misty talking about how she's frustrated with Luke doing this vigilante business again. And it's kind of annoying because we thought that she was over that, right? And Luke Cage, we got that sense.
By the end of Luke Cage, she should have come to that understanding.
Yeah. So going through that talk again was kind of annoying. But I think we kind of see her. I think she turns around starting, I think it's in episode 8, where she kind of backs Luke again. But in this talk, I put, both were kind of concerned about Luke and had different opinions. Misty is afraid for Luke to be in trouble again and put back into jail, whereas Claire is like more, she gets the bigger picture, and she actually says that. And I think from my perspective, Claire gets it. Luke needs to be a hero, and he's willing to take on whatever that costs because he's got these superpowers. And Misty, in that conversation hasn't gotten it yet.
Right. So the other two who are ridiculously disillusioned, and I will admit I haven't watched the end of Daredevil season 2. It's one of the things I need to get caught up on. But Karen and Foggy, right? Still continue to behave as if somehow Matt is the one who's delusioned. Like in this universe, people who witnessed the incident and with Karen, somebody who's been affected by the hand, like if you're insisting that there isn't the need for these type of people in this universe, you're the one who's delusional. Like it's not, and her notion that, you need to get your life back together, her and Foggy, you need to get your life back together. You need to stop doing this. You're insane. Like, no, refusing to acknowledge that there are threats in this universe that exceed the capability of the standard law enforcement units and require people with special abilities. Like, your friend who is blind has the capability to fight ninjas and win. You're continuing to ignore that and refuse to acknowledge it as a reality. It's so by the defenders, it's more than grating, right? So I could understand if this were like a Mark Spector. I could understand if Moon Knight, where you're questioning his sanity, and nobody really sees Moon Knight operate. Like it, if this were a superhero who you had just never witnessed them, and thought that they were somebody who was actually somebody else, like I could get that, but this isn't that case. Like, so it's just really overbearing and obnoxious and pretentious. And again, it makes these characters who are really supposed to be intelligent characters and they're supposed to be strong threads in the superheroes' lives seem incredibly stupid and ignorant.
Yeah, even in the comics, it's interesting. In the Daredevil comics I'm referring to, Foggy right now is the only one who knows that Matt's Daredevil, and he's 100% backing him up, and he's accepted he's a hero and heroes are needed in this universe. And yeah, it's kind of like, it's annoying that that they use that what's the word I'm looking for? Just that dialogue over and over again. It's kind of like, I don't know. Part of me wonders that there's this greater scheme going on with Netflix. Whereas I feel Defenders had a lower budget. Don't quote me on that. So that we kind of got, worse, less action scenes and a worse script because they were focusing more on the actual characters, TV shows than
So I don't know if that's. I mean, so Drew Goddard executive produced this or produced this, so it was a big deal, and he seems to be involved at the producer level with most of these shows. I kind of have the sense or the feeling that he's, and I think I've used it before in a previous episode, that he's architecting or orchestrating this thing much in the way that, you know, Whedon was given the MCU to do the same too. And I guess I don't know if the Russo brothers are doing it now in the MCU or what, but I kind of feel like he's Netflix's, you know, Joss Whedon / Russo brothers / Zack Snyder / I guess Whedon is now over in the DC entertainment universe, probably ratcheting up to do the same thing. So, but I will agree with you that I think the total cost of putting this together in terms of all of the high-priced actors and actresses involved, and the sheer number of people is why we got 8 episodes. I think Marvel, Disney, whatever, paid them the same amount to pull off the Defenders, and I think Netflix's response to that was, okay, if you're giving us the same money the exact same budget, and they're probably giving them the same budget for each of the shows as a package, I might guess, then we can get you 8 episodes. And that may have caused some issues. I wonder if there was originally an intent to make it 13, like the other series, and they tried to, and maybe they skipped a couple plot threads to try and pack it into 8.
That very well could be it, yeah. I mean, so my next, I would say, I don't know, like, this is hard for me to do, but I have to say it. I think if I had to rate all 5 Netflix shows right now, Defenders would get a 7. Jessica Jones and Iron Fist would get a 7.5, and Daredevil and Luke Cage would get an 8 on my scale.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
So that's what I feel right now. Maybe 8.5 for Luke Cage and Daredevil.
Yeah, and I think I gave Luke Cage a 7.5 was my overall score when I individually graded all of them when we were at the GWW. So I guess the other couple comments I'd like to make on this is, so I thought Foggy bringing Matt the Daredevil suit was pretty awesome. That was a
yes.
touch.
And that's funny because that happens like sometimes in the comics too, where if Matt's traveling, he'll have to get his suit, you know, what's kind of snuck over so that nobody knows. You know, that would be a bad thing if you're just traveling with the superhero suit. You go on an airplane, what the heck?
Right, so, especially with all his batons and special weapons and armor and stuff in there.
Terrorists!
But the one line that I loved, actually Entertainment Weekly thought that the scene was underplayed, but kind of it encapsulates and succinctly conveys my rant, is when Karen pulls Matt aside and gives him all the blubbering silliness, and his response is, "Karen, this is my life." Right, and I kind of felt like, well, there it is. It's like stop the stupidity and denial, right? Like, Daredevil's not make believe. That's who I am, right? Like, yeah, get over it, right? You know, figure it, get on board or get out. So I really do like that. So yeah, so I mean, the rest of this. Oh, so I didn't realize that. Okay, no, yeah, so this is why it's good for us to have the script. So actually, this has actually one of the biggest and best fights of the whole series in it, because Matt, Jessica, and Luke actually do the 3-person standoff with Gal, Bakudo, and Murakami in this episode.
Okay.
Which, as we started talking about it, I thought was episode 8, but it's actually this one, and that is this is one of the best fights because now the Defenders actually take it to the fingers of the hand, and the fingers of the hand actually get set back on their heels and have to orchestrate an escape.
Yeah.
So yeah, and pretty much they all got clowned, right, in this fight. I mean, there was the disappointing thing, and it was a very interesting dynamic because they were cutting back and forth. They were cutting the camera back and forth between the fight in the parking garage between the rest of the Defenders and the Fingers, and Danny fighting Elektra down in the hole. And each time they would cut to the Defenders, I'd be like, "Oh yeah, like the tide of the battle is on their side, and they would flash back to Danny. I was like, all right, Danny, light it up. Like, here you go. And there was and she was beating him. So I would go up to this like really nice high when they would flash to the parking garage, and then I would just like be like curling into the fetal position when they would go to Danny. And what bugged me and what bothered me about the jankiness of that disconnect, I believe the emotion of pitching up to the high on the roller coaster, right, and then being dropped back down when you would cut back to Danny was intentional. But where it felt janky was, okay, he's beaten Elektra twice before, right? Twice before in a team battle, Danny intercepting and encountering and pairing off with Elektra has resulted in her being taken out, right, for a long period of time in the battle. So I'm like, why is he losing to her? Like, she hasn't done anything to become more powerful. Like, why is he losing to her now?
It's the mind games, right? Because as we've seen in the past, Danny is very emotional in his fighting style, and he kind of loses his zen or his focus, or and that's exactly, she falls right into the trap, and he accidentally, that's my last point is for that one. Scene between Danny and Electric are cool, and Electric tricks Danny into opening the entrance to find the substance. So it's interesting, kind of to see how Danny's still young, and he is the Iron Fist, and he's just he's a newer superhero than Jessica Jones and Luke Cage and Daredevil. So I think he's still trying to build a better stronger backbone to the villains that are kind of toying with him.
All right. Yep. Very good. So let's move on to talk about the final episode now. So you said this was called The Resume. I thought this episode was just called The Defenders. Do I have that wrong?
Oh, you're right. The Defenders. I don't know where I saw the resume from.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Wait.
Yeah, that one is The Defenders, which is funny because it's the end of The Defenders.
Right. But it's kind of a nice. I guess it's a nice touch. So let's talk about that. Maybe we'll just work our way backwards. So, and I guess maybe we'll talk a little bit about the ending. So the ending, so we compared it to Luke Cage a little bit, right? So Luke Cage had a full episode denouement, right? That the action ended on Luke Cage with episode 12. Or at least at the within the first 10 to 15 minutes of the final episode, and then I think that's what it was. And then that had like a 30 to 40 minute closeout. This one had about either 11 or 18 minutes, which is still pretty long.
Well, I feel like Luke Cage's was a bit more monumental. He accepts the fact that he has to pay for his crimes and he's incarcerated, and that's very touching and hard to see because our favorite hero from Luke Cage, after all he's done for that area, he still has to overcome that trial. And for this, it's kind of like, I was just so over the fact that, they think Daredevil's dead, but us as the audience, we know there's no way that they've gotten rid of Daredevil. And sure enough, at the very end scene, at least tell me what happened to the hand, right? That would have been so much better, shorten down the grieving and cut to everything. It's cool. It makes me think that there's a sense we're going to see these characters line up again. That's what I'll take away from that, and that Daredevil's still alive.
Yeah. So this is another thing to bring up that's very weird to me. There is nothing right at as this episode. It feels very much like Avengers, the first movie. Well, it feels very much to me like the time in between the Avengers and Age of Ultron. So one of the problems I had with the pickup of Age of Ultron is at the end of the Avengers, there are a few lines, particularly from Robert Downey Jr. As Tony Stark, that indicate like there is no standing Avengers team at that point, right? Like they were called, they were brought together, they executed a mission. It seems to end for me with the expectation that okay, they're basically now going to all go their separate ways, and they're all going to be given like a pager, and like if ever again there is a threat large enough to warrant them all being brought together, that they'll get a call. Age of Ultron picks up. I mean, Cap says at the Age of Ultron that they have been working together for the past few months trying to track down Hydra, and I'm like, where's the jump from like we're not a standing team, we're just going to all do our same thing and wait for like this bat signal pager to go off to we've been running coordinated operations across the globe for the last 3 to 4 months. This kind of feels like pointed in that same direction. The Defenders ends with no notion that they are a standing team that will be called together again. And at this point, they don't even know where Murdoch is. And they're assuming that he's dead. So
and I think they're trying to fix that because if you remember, sorry guys, spoiler for Spider-Man Homecoming, you see in Spider-Man Homecoming that they're relocating to a new Avengers tower, right? If you remember that scene that they're all packing up from Stark Industries, if I remember correctly. I'm assuming it's that they've created a new Avengers tower.
So that is the Avengers HQ that you see at the end of Winter Soldier or Winter Soldier. That's the headquarters that they're in Age of Ultron.
Okay, so
the tower was destroyed like either in I think the tower was destroyed in Iron Man 3.
Okay, so what should have happened is Spider-Man should have come before, and so that way we would have at least had that.
Right. So it just ends on this. It's weird, right? Because they title the last episode "The Defenders," but when the episode "The Defenders" ends, there is no Defenders, right? So now, obviously, there's all types of ways to contrive this, but it doesn't feel it doesn't feel like a cherry on top of the cake at the end, right? Now, that all being said, I was very happy overall with the action part of the episode. I love the camera pan continuous shot when they are down in the hole. Each of the Defenders taking on like 4 or 5, henchmen of the Hand. And it just kind of pans around the room 360 degrees. Everybody's doing well. They take Gao out. They take Murakami out. They take out the fingers of the Hand that they had just fought the previous episode, as well as incrementally taking down the other 30 henchmen that are there. So that was good. I wasn't so super crazy about the fight between Daredevil and Elektra. The scripting of it, there's just a little too much. She's a vampire trying to, turn him to be with her. There's a little too much Darth Vader trying to turn Luke Skywalker. It evoked all of the, pop cultural tropes of that type of situation. They're still good in you. And I'm like, did they rip this directly from like the Return of the Jedi script or what? So, and it didn't feel like I don't. So Elektra's plan is she's going to embrace her evil side because she thinks that's the way to lure Matt. Like, I'm like, okay, she's evil, but she's like evil with no, like, all she wants to do is be immortal. Like, that doesn't necessarily constitute being evil.
To be evil, right?
Right? Like, and the person she killed was an evil person. Like, so she just doesn't come off feeling like Darth Vader, although all of her lines are scripted that way. And like it doesn't make as much sense as like, which really at the end of the day makes his whole sacrificing of himself kind of seem pointless. Like really, at that point in time, the only reason you want to stop her is because of the things she was doing as a slave of the hand, and you might still want to stop her if you think she's going to continue killing. But now that she has the substance, she really has no need to go on continuing to commit crimes, right? Like, it seems like she's brought the whole thing to an end herself, and the fight is just like an unnecessary kind of pride-oriented thing.
Well, it's kind of ironic, right? Because she talks about wanting to survive, but yet she's willing to let this cave collapse on them both. Like, that's an oxymoron,
right? Well, that's like she's won, right? She's literally won. She literally snatches defeat from victory, from the jaws of victory. Like, there was 0 point in her fighting Matt Murdock to the death, right? Absolutely none. Quite frankly, she could have just thrown the script and she's like, "Hey, I'm immortal now, right? I've got the substance, Matt. And yeah, like I'm done being evil. Let's just hook up."
Yes, or
right?
like if you want to catch me, like I'm going to be in the hand now or something.
Yeah,
and then it's like some chase scene.
Right, and so I mean, I guess that could have been the play, that the notion that she was going to consume the substance and then,
and we never actually saw like if like we saw what the substance was, but we don't even know if they ever used it. Like there were some moments in between there where at any time.
Yeah, so I felt that was confusing as well. So Bakuto, so when Bakuto goes to fight Colleen Wing, Colleen is like, you're in your weakened state. Are you sure you want to risk this fight? And Bakuto comes back with, "Oh no, we've recaptured the substance." And I'm like, but I don't feel like there's actually been TV episode time enough for you to have actually taken a dose. Like, it's still bones. As far as I understand, you guys still have to ground this stuff down and liquefy it. But then he gets shot by Misty Knight later on and is unaffected. So I'm like, okay, I guess they all had a slice of like Shao Lao dragon bone cake down in the basement or something. Like, yeah, it's. I mean, the big fight in the tunnel was pretty awesome. Even the elevator scene where Jessica grabs the two ends of the split cable and holds them up. I feel like her power set just hasn't been conveyed that well in the Defenders. And I can certainly understand in a show like this that there's an assumption that you've watched Jessica Jones, but like they constantly define what Luke's powers and capabilities are. I guess maybe I guess maybe Luke and Danny are the only ones that they really have any active scripted parts that say, "Hey, if you haven't watched Luke Cage or Iron Fist, like here's what their capabilities are." They actually spend 0 time, and there's actually no graphics that tell you what Daredevil's power set is. So I'm just coming to that realization that that's kind of weird, and I wonder how intentional that is.
It frustrated me, right? Because through this series, I have to say I love seeing Danny, I love seeing Luke, I love seeing Jessica, but every time I saw Elektra, there's some cool Elektra scenes, but for the most part, it's like it was been mopey Matt Murdock. I mean, there were most of the time. I just feel like they didn't do a good job with Daredevil in this, so I hope there's some redemption coming up for him.
Yeah, they kind of started to bring it around in these final 2 episodes where they had him marginally assuming a leadership role. Although, yes, but he never really nails that, right? Like that's what Stick intended for him, and it seemed like the part of the intention was to show him realizing that destiny, but he doesn't really seal the deal. And it's also very strange to me, even though I know that the others in the comics kind of have. Well, Jessica and Luke kind of basically their costumes are just their street clothes. And Jessica kind of her, stylistically always has like the jean jacket and the scarf. So I get that, and Luke just wears basically black jeans and a yellow or black T-shirt. So I get that, but it's very weird in this series how Daredevil is the only person in costume. and just starkly stands out and contrasts so greatly with the other heroes on the team.
But I mean, I guess for all intents and purposes, like, Luke and Jessica, I mean, I guess they're more to be feared because they have super strength. And the other thing is Matt. We know why Matt got his outfit is because of, he was messing with Wilson Fisk and his gang. And there's something, I don't think we've seen Jessica and Luke, have any enemies that are currently alive that are of that magnitude of scariness. I mean, definitely Jessica, with Purple Man, he was definitely a bad villain. And, I don't know, maybe Jessica will, get a costume later because she goes against some pretty big villains.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so one of the other things that also seems naive about all of these characters is that none of them necessarily assume that any of the fingers of the hand are going to come up to intercept Colleen and Claire. It seems like they just all assume that the only people they're running into are henchmen. And nobody goes, hey, maybe one of the superpower types should take the C4 and plant it. A tough tactical choice, I will admit. But of course, things definitely look like they're going to go sideways when Bakudo shows up. And then, of course, it's just, I mean, I guess it's real or hilarious, but like Misty calling Claire's cell phone in the middle of the sword fight and it ringing. And then she calls back a second time when Claire hangs up on her. I'm like, it would really, they're all using Galaxy phones in the show, so I guess Samsung had something to do.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
yeah. I guess Samsung had something to do with promotional content in here. It's pretty easy to mute a Galaxy phone, right? You swipe down and the mute control is right there in the window shade. Like it would have taken you just as much time for you to mute the phone as you did hanging up. So I don't know. So, but of course, the best thing about that whole thing is that but it's kind of, again, it's kind of silly because it's kind of repetitive. Is we get Misty Knight losing her arm because of course that sets her up to transform into the Misty Knight that we know in the comics with the bionic arm.
Yeah.
And the story is that she wakes up in the hospital. Colleen is there. Danny owns the hospital, and it's an advanced tech medical facility. So obviously she's going to get the bionic arm attachment there. It's just kind of weird because they had an opportunity to do that. They cut that too close to the bone in Luke Cage, right? Because she gets shot in the arm. It hits an artery. She's bleeding out. It's the same arm, right? So my thing is, if you weren't going to give her the bionic arm, then like, why have an injury that is so similar to what happens to her in the Defenders? Now, maybe different writing staffs. Maybe the writing staff on Iron Fist wanted to. Maybe there was no plan at that point for her to become the bionic arm Misty Knight, but they wanted to give a head nod to it. I don't know, but it's so telegraphed in this episode. Like, oh, Misty Knight happens to show up with a dude wielding a sword. I wonder if someone's going to lose their arm. So I mean, it's fine. And then Colleen decapitates Bakudo. So that's I guess satisfying. There is a bit of and one of the things I love in Luke Cage was the music in Luke. It was all very authentic Harlem music, and it went from 1940s through 60s jazz inspired tunes to present day hip hop. And of course, we get a big burst of a song from Wu-Tang Clan in the battle in the tunnel, which was just awesome because because I feel like as Luke is getting pumped and feeling this fight, I feel like that song kind of unifies like all the Defenders in trying to represent and convey their spiritual feeling, which is this silent, incremental merging into an actual team that culminates. I feel like when that hip hop song plays. So, we get Danny taking out Gal with the Iron Fist. And actually, so in that scene, did that look like a new Iron Fist power? Did it look like he threw the punch and it just air punched and force pushed everyone when he froze his hand in midair? It didn't seem like he actually hit Gal with that punch.
It might be a new way how he uses his fist, to do different things.
Right. So I don't know. The whole thing. Again, the redeeming content in this episode is the fight in the tunnel. Much around it. The fight in the tunnel, I guess, unfortunately, Misty Knight losing her arm and Colleen finally putting down Bakudo. But the rest of it feels a bit overly stitched together. I didn't like the Iron Fist closeout because when he's on the roof of the building, sitting in the crouch position. Well, first of all, it's his silhouette. I thought it was Matt.
I thought that too. Yeah, that was annoying.
Yeah, and then it's him, but he's not in the Iron Fist suit, right? Like he's in some weird jumpsuit. So I'm like, I don't understand what the point of that was. And then of course we close out with Matt, who is alive as we all knew he would be.
And somehow he's at the nuns that raised him or whatever again. Like, yeah, how the hell? What the? Was it Elektra? Like, come on. Like, I don't know.
Right. No, so that's,
why would he call, Karen or Foggy, to take care of him? So it's kind of like.
Yeah, so I don't know what they're setting up for season 3, but I felt it was apropos. That frequently happens in the comics, that he gets found by some member of the Catholic Church and winds up there. I guess the thing I was gonna, and I don't know if you pulled the thread on it, but probably right before you started reading the Charles Soule run, Daredevil went to, I think, Wakanda. And turns out that is where his mother was hanging out, and his mother, who had supposedly left his father and Matt, turned out to actually be a nun who raised him in a Catholic home after he lost his father. And I wanted to know if you had come across in the comics and knew whether or not her name was Maggie, which is the name that the nurse calls out for when Matt wakes up.
Oh, I didn't know. See, I just started after that arc. So
okay.
That's interesting, though.
And of course, the other quirk in the comics, which it seems like Marvel completely ignores now in its current state of great organizational and strategic approach that they're using in comics.
God.
well, so in the thing that in the event that immediately preceded Secret Wars and Battle World was the death of the Watcher, and one of the things that happened then, Original Sin, I think it was Original Sin. One of the things that happened is all these great secrets of the Marvel Universe get revealed, all these things that the characters had come to believe that weren't really true. And Daredevil's was that while he thought his father was a saint, and that the mother had left them, it turns out that the father was actually abusive, and that the mother actually left because she was being abused. Now, why she left her kid in an abusive father's care, I guess maybe because the father wasn't abusive towards Matt. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if season 3 goes that route, in Matt finding out that his father was not as altruistic as he believed. And I think in Daredevil season 1, are there some allusions that he was abusive to the mother?
I don't remember.
I can't remember.
I gotta rewatch some Daredevil, man. I miss it.
Right. So I've pretty much expended all my thoughts and considerations on the wrap up of the season. How did you feel walking away from it?
Let's see. I guess a couple of things that I pointed out was there were some cool lines, like 5 minutes in, Madame Gal has this interesting conversation with Elektra, explaining that if they remove the substance from the beast, that it'll make a huge part of New York collapse. So that I like that they explain that's the overall the big evil from the hand, and why the earthquake was so bad is, I guess, that this oil what the substance looks like to me was kind of like some tar or whatever, and that was kind of stabilizing the structure underneath part of the city, and they removed that tar, that substance, it would unstabilize that ground. And then the second thing I wrote in here was 17 minutes in, Danny kind of says it like it is. The elders of Kunlun showed too much mercy by banishing the hand. And we kind of learned that the Iron Fist was kind of, they were created to rectify that mistake. That basically, I'm guessing any mistakes that the elders of Kunlun had made, you know. And it's interesting, you know, now there's all these questions that we have, you know, about the origin of the Iron Fist. And, you know, one thing apparently we learned is that his fist can seal and it also can open doors. So I would love to see that explored deeper. Because I haven't read the Iron Fist comics, so I don't know much about the origins of the other Iron Fists. And it would finally be cool if we got to finally see, you know, if they bring back the hand, I'd love to see it in Danny's chapter again. Maybe like we'll see how the hand, you know, tries to restructure themselves, because they always like disappear, then they pop up again. So maybe we'll see them without the season, or maybe they'll be back. So that's kind of my finishing points there. And then at the very end, I was just going to say that the Daredevil and Elektra conversation was just annoying, and the 11 minutes of the grieving over Matt's death was just kind of annoying too.
Yeah, I guess one of the other disappointing things for me is that, you know, so between two full series, Danny Rand has still not come around to be the Iron Fist that I know, and have been waiting to arrive from the comics. Right, he's still very unsure of himself, very very young, very naive. You know, very
And Madame Gao even says, she uses the example. She's like, "Oh, I remember first, you know, I seen you. You know, your mom was holding your hand across the street, and then as a little boy, you know, you wanted to shove her away and do it yourself. And you know, oh, how foolish you are." And he just kind of gets in a fuss over that, but it's kind of true. It's like, okay, you need some help right now, you know, to become this Iron Fist. You're not quite ready to do it on your own.
Well, and the thing of it is like the nearest he was to being the Iron Fist that I was kind of looking for was when he first arrives in New York at the beginning of his own series, where he's just so naive that he wants to do the right thing and doesn't understand that mankind is not inherently good. But he gets more westernized from that point and progressively worse. So I don't know where he comes back around, but that whole thing was kind of disappointing, and maybe it seems like that's what they're setting up for Iron Fist season 2. I will say that, all being said, while I had certain detractions and disappointments from the series in terms of its narrative and its overall scripting and its plot and pacing, I know that sounds like a lot. I still walk away from it overall feeling that I'm glad it was done. I'm glad that deal was put together. I'm glad that I watched it through the whole series. I'm glad I didn't just let it like sit in my entertainment backlog for 2 years and watch like one episode every 3 months. I'm glad I experienced the whole thing as a unitary story. And I still come away from it predominantly inspired by the concept of the Defenders, which, again, these are not the Defenders from the comics. I might argue that they're better, because the Defenders from the comics were kind of all a bunch of F-ups, right? Like, so these guys are actually arguably better, and I like the potential for future stories. I just wanted this one to end with their overall story and arc a bit further along than they left it. But still, I love the action of it. I loved seeing these 4 characters and those 4 actors and actresses on screen together, and the chemistry that they had in the story that was told of kind of interweaving their lives and their and their different ethics and approach to taking on villainy, and the fights with the four of them taking on large forces, to me, had the same feeling and effect that an Avengers movie does. So hopefully they'll learn from this and come back a little better and stronger next time.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Anything else you want to cover, or is this our final swan song for this show?
Final swan song for this show.
All right, man. So from here, as I've mentioned the last couple of episodes, Dave and I, who constitute the entertainment crew on the E2KG channel, our E2KG network, need to take a brief pause and try and figure out what exactly we're going to do next. But other than that, it's been great to have anyone and everyone along, the listeners and the viewers. I will eventually get these last few episodes edited and posted to our regular channels. My apologies for people only being able to get it from YouTube as an archive video. I hopefully will have more time to take care of that here shortly. So on behalf of myself, David Pecci, the entertainment crew, and the E2KG network channel on YouTube, thanks again. My name has been Agaskally Stamus of Gearworks.com, E2KG, and Rounding Off Infinity. That's going to do it for us, and we are out of here.